Hello, welcome everybody to the 2020 Brooklyn Book Festival. We're here today to discuss memoirs and graphic novels. With me today, I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. Please state your pronouns along with it so that everyone knows how to address you. And who wants to go first?
I go first.
No, ladies first.
My name's Yao Xiao. I go by she, her. Thank you for having me on the panel.
Next.
I'm Tyler Fetter. I use she, her pronouns.
Excellent.
I'm very excited to be here.
And last but not least.
And I'm Mike Hawthorne, he, him, and I'm happy to be here.
All right. So each of you has released kind of a very personal sort of memoir work over the last year, and I guess we're here to discuss that stuff. Why don't we start with each of you can discuss or sort of talk about your book a little bit. Let's go with let's do yours first.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. My book, Everything is Beautiful and I'm Not Afraid, came out this year in March. This is my first time publishing a full-length graphic novel through a traditional publisher. I have previously done webcomics and a running series on autostraddle.com. And this is the collection and some additional new comics of the comic Baopu that I have been running on Autostraddle. So this is a full collection with 10 to 15 unique comics, and a lot of them have been online before that. And the story started with me coming out to my mother as bisexual at the time, and a series of emotional change and growth that happened after that. So the whole book has been created over 4 years. It's highly personal. It's actually not published as a memoir, and a lot of them I would say it's metaphorical personal expression and does not follow a lot of exact actual events besides the very initial coming out moment. So it was published as a very beautiful volume of comics with full color illustration, and I would usually not introduce it as memoir, but I have been talking a lot about memoir comic writing and writing about my own experience through the creation of this book.
Okay. All right. Tyler?
My book is called Dancing at the Pity Party, and it is a graphic memoir about my mom getting cancer and dying when I was in my second year of college. And it was really just a long time coming. When I was like a junior or senior, I took a creative nonfiction class, and I made a comic about my mom. And I had always loved drawing, but I had never really made comics before. It was always like other than for the school newspaper, but it was always just like drawings. But this was the first time I made something really personal like that. And it was such a good process for me. Like, it felt really good. It was fun. It was cathartic. So this book basically came out of that like 10 years later. And even though it's about death, it's not 100% sad. I always feel like I have to tell people that right away. It's not like, I mean, it is definitely sad. Like, no one would ever say it's not sad, but there are lighter moments in there too, because I think people like to think that grief and death and stuff are like really one note, just sad all the time, but like they're just like every other part of life. There's always going to be something to laugh about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Mike, can you go ahead and tell us about yours?
Sure. My name is Mike Hawthorne. I'm author of Happiness Will Follows. It's the publisher's sort of marketing as a memoir, but that's kind of a scam. It's probably more about my mother than it is me. It it begins with her belief that a curse. She was from Puerto Rico and believed in both Catholicism and some otherworldly kind of witchcraft stuff. So we came home one day. She found what she believed were the signs of a curse put on me that was supposed to kill me. So she set this series of events into motion that led to me, us being separated, she moving me over to Pennsylvania. And the story sort of focuses on both her inability to adapt to mainland US from Puerto Rico and raising me by herself, and just how difficult that was for her. And some of the mental health issues she was facing because of just some pretty horrible experiences she had growing up, but also just her violent tendencies and anger issues. It's kind of a bummer too, I won't lie. But I'd like to think that if I did my job well, it was presented in a beautiful way so that you don't feel so traumatized after reading the damn thing. Although I was traumatized drawing and writing it, frankly.
Well, I can't speak for others, but I've read it and I loved it. So,
well, thank you so much.
I loved all of your books, actually. Like I said in an email earlier, I found really personal points of connection with all of them. Mike, I had an abusive parent too growing up, and I dealt with a lot of that really complicated relationship where it's not healthy and it's not safe. But at the end of things, like you don't wish them ill.
Yeah, you can't help but love them.
Yeah, even if you can't be around them, and even if you can't really have contact with them, you can't help but love them, and you wish it was not the way that it was.
Yeah,
and yeah. I really get that. Tyler, I lost my mom at 14.
Oh man.
My freshman year of high school. So same thing. She had breast cancer that spread through her body. So
just the worst. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, people relate to my book. It's like, nice that we're in the same boat, kind of. But like,
Carter Munir had a book called Dead Parents Club that was very specifically about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have for you.
No, I mean, it becomes this very kind of macabre bit of humor.
Yeah.
Because there was I really liked the drop in the glass analogy that you used in your book, Tyler. The way that it's just a single event, a single drop, but it colors the entire rest of the contents there. In the way I really like the way that worked. So, Yao, with yours, I really like the fact that you're quick to specify that it's not strictly a memoir, because I did notice that it, unlike the other two books, you were very much telling individual small stories that were connected but were not necessarily a single narrative. Mm-hmm. And I really identified as somebody who's queer and trans. I really enjoyed is maybe not the right word, but I really connected with that feeling of isolation and how you're just kind of struggling to define yourself according to your own values and your own metrics, and how you really want that, you really miss that sort of familial connection, but at the same time, you have to be who you are.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I think that's something that I try to keep pushing and pushing with my comic writing in general, because I do want to tell the blow by blow real life version of that story, but it's always been really hard for me to find my own point of view in that, because I feel so pushed by the kind of story that I should write. I want to write that story of being a Chinese immigrant, coming out to my mom, like exactly how that happened and what did she say to me and what did I say to her, and then how all of my relationships changed. And this is that book, but every time I look through it, it does not tell you exactly what happened. And in some way that is satisfying to me, and then in another way I can't wait to be ready to write another book and then another book after that, to like keep getting out what I really want people to know. So some of that emotion is here, but some of the stories that happen, like there was one where my character was scribbling on the wall that says I'm a queer immigrant, and then just like older Chinese parents just jumped on the table and covered it with a Chinese painting. That like clearly did not happen, but that's how my cartoonist brain felt like that's what happened. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a really strong metaphorical presentation. That's one of the comics that really stuck with me when I read that. I really liked that. That sort of brings me to my question, I guess. Why a memoir? And in your case, why not a memoir? But let's go ahead and start with Tyler first this time.
Sure. I really felt like after my mom died, so I was a screenwriting major in college. There was film technically, but it was like screenwriting was all I was doing. And like after my mom died, basically every project I ever wrote kind of had some element of like dead parent in it. And it just felt like I needed to get it out of my system in order to make anything about any other topic. So I don't know, there's something very freeing about being super vulnerable in this way, because I'm sort of a private, like quiet person in real life, but I can just like hand someone this book and then they know everything. Stuff that maybe would be like awkward to bring up when I'm meeting someone for the first time. So yeah, doing a memoir has been a great comfort to me. And I've had a lot of people who lost their mom or lost some other loved one in their life reach out to me. And I didn't know a ton of people in that boat. When my mom died, I had like a handful of friends, but we didn't have the kind of relationship where we would really talk about it in any kind of depth. So it's been like a real blessing to feel this like just great community as soon as I just dumped this like overwhelming thing into a book and handed it to people.
We're getting a jackets made.
Yeah,
Dead Parents Club.
Yeah. Honestly, that's
great.
That. My therapist said it's weird, but I think it's nice.
Yeah.
I think at a certain point, like you have to embrace a little bit of the humor of the situation.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Mike, how about you? Why a memoir?
Why a memoir? I have two reasons. One was I frankly did not want to actually do one. I got a little bamboozled. I kind of bamboozled myself into it. It came about to I was in New York for a book signing. Primarily, I'm known for my goofy like mainstream comics. And at the time, I was working for DC Vertigo and doing a signing, sitting with the editor. At the time, he was sort of infatuated with The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, which I think it just won the Pulitzer or something. And I made an offhand joke about, hey, that happened to me. A curse was put on me. And he demanded I tell him the story immediately. And I didn't realize it was a pitch over dinner. And by the end of the story, he says, write that book and we'll publish it. And I thought, holy, can I curse? I should probably be careful. Holy crap. I don't know what to do. I don't want to make this book, but at the time, if Vertigo asked you to do a book, you kind of did a book. So
Yeah,
we
that's
made
fair.
it. Yeah, we made it. This was right before the New 52. And so a lot of things were moving at DC and Warner Brothers. And so they ended up not putting the book out. And I contested the rights and got them back and sat on it for 10 years because I was terrified to publish it. And through some conversations through mutual friends, connected with the folks at Boom, who sort of talked me into the time being right. The other reason why I was willing to do a memoir is because, frankly, my mom was dead. Like, she was small. She was less than 5 feet tall. She was about 4. My wife says she was 4'10". I could have sworn she was 6'3", but evidently she was just under 5 feet tall and like 98 pounds when she passed away. But if she were still around, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If I released this book, she would have come and hunted me down. So I can partly do this memoir because enough people in our family have passed away that I can get away with it. But it is probably a good thing. I have not been brave in my work. I've been very lucky in that I have a lot of books out, but probably all from behind the wall, and have hidden myself away, sort of an open view. This was the first one where I sort of threw the doors open and let people storm the gates, and it was scary to do, but it's been incredibly fulfilling. And I think it's the kind of book I don't know that I have another experience that comes anywhere near it in terms of giving up exposing all your weak spots and waiting for a punch that doesn't quite come. And instead people tell you how it helped them understand something about themselves, or they connected it with it in a way that none of my other books have ever done. So it's been great. I hated making the book, but it's been a great experience after.
I really like that metaphor. That's good.
Good.
Yeah. In your case, why not a metaphor? You went into this a little bit already, but do you want to go ahead and expand? Or
Yeah, when I first started drawing comics, it was just 1 or 2 years when I graduated from art school. I went to SBA in New York, and I actually studied illustration. I had wanted to make comics or get into comics for a long time before that, but that was something that I've been told, or I've told myself, like, that's really, really hard to do. Like, you don't have that kind of time or money. Like, you're just like not able to make it as a writer. So I've actually positioned myself as a commercial illustrator, and I was doing mostly very elaborate commercial illustrations, like magazine covers and packaging. And I was just waiting to like maybe try to like stick around for as long as I can, and then one day when I'm like feeling okay somewhere, I'll write and publish my own book and have the content out, so like I feel safer in that place to do it. But then like I think just 2 years after college, there was a lot of webcomics I was reading, and at the time I really wanted to write memoir because everyone was writing them, and then we were all like 24, and I just felt like I have no content whatsoever, and I was not ready to write anything that is anything that profound. But when I was having this experience with my family and with my own identity, I didn't want to start off writing a memoir. I just want to read one so I can process that experience and move on. And I was primarily a comics reader. If there's something that I really wanted to read a comment about, or I wanted to like share with someone, I would go on Tumblr, look for a comic through like hashtags, and I would just like read it. And maybe think that I'll draw that one day, but I'm not doing that right now because I'm not ready. But it was just not possible to find one of a young Chinese woman who's talking about this queer relationship with her family who's in China, so not in like a complete Western context as a second generation immigrant conversing with their parents, but not as someone who is living in China as a citizen there. So it was a very, at the time I felt like that was a unique situation in my generation. And having to communicate with my family from a different culture that I have situated myself in, where I'm refusing to go back and assimilate. And also here in America, I am not assimilating 100% into American mainstream. So I just like realized that I cannot find someone's content about this, and I started just writing them myself, thinking if I ignore all the criticism I've given myself, like you can't write this right now, or this is too early for you to write something, or this is not as good as so-and-so's comic. What if you just ignore all that and just write whatever you want and see what happens? So I've had some comics that I wasn't sharing anybody, but I ended up emailing Autostraddle to ask them if they could put me on their monthly comics slot, because I was reading them every month and I was getting their content. So I was just hoping that maybe they would also like what I have been creating. Maybe that fills a need of someone else. So that ended up happening. And at that time, for like maybe 2 or 3 years, it still was not a book, and it was not a memoir. It was a comic that I was doing. It had no genre. And eventually I got 1 or 2 offers from agents and publishers that were like, hey, do you want to publish a book? And at the time, I was still getting pushed in a few directions. Like, do you want to make this a memoir? We need you to make it narrative. And there is another direction. Like, do you want to make this like a quote book, like a gift book with like profound little vignettes? And I just said no to neither until this book materialized exactly like how I wanted it to be, and that preserved my original intention into writing this collection. I think it's part comic, part poetry, but a lot of it is just what I think cartooning is like. It's cartooning, it's comics. So I'm really happy that this is out, but I was not intentional in trying to write a memoir because I think that's a really hard journey to be on, and I've learned so much from being in a lot of memoir conversations now. I am working on my second book, which is a memoir. I am extremely scared every time I have to work on it. It's really, 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 really hard. And I would say the process of this book is traumatizing. It's very different from what the memoirs have to do. That's my very long answer to where this book comes from.
No,
Yeah.
I think that was a great answer. I think it really covered the bases there. And I think, I mean, I don't want to speak for Mike and Tyler, but I think that they can both relate with the idea of being vulnerable during the writing process and how difficult that can be at times.
Sucks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Not that you need my luck, but I wish you well.
Thank you. Just going
yeah, I mean, I really liked your book. And if a memoir is what's next for you, I'm very excited to read that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for not being a memoir, your current book is very good at capturing emotional states. If it's not, directly literal translations of things that happened in your life, you're very capable of capturing the way those events made you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that shows wonderfully in the book. I think that you guys, all three of you are that way. I had quite a lot of emotional moments reading all of your books. I don't know where I was going with that thought, but I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I appreciate it. So I guess my next question is, when you put this book out and you know that people are going to read it, and let's start with Mike here, because you mentioned like you're opening yourself up for a blow that doesn't quite come. What is it that you hope that people take away from your book in the read?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think, I to be frank, I really have tried not to think too much about that. The number one thing, though, that did cause me concern was that, especially when you tell this kind of thing in a comic book format, that people would look for a villain in the story, and that villain would end up being my mother. And I really wanted to avoid, hero versus villain, especially with my art style, which is more associated with, mainstream comics. I just was very, very concerned about that. And in some ways, the book had an audience of one. Like the biggest point of anxiety for me was how my sister would receive the book. Because I have an older sister. She's about 15 years older. And it's a little like the joke with, you've heard that joke with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. She did everything he did, but backwards and in heels.
Mm-hmm.
She went through all the abuse I went through, but as a gay woman. And so I've reminded myself often that, like, no matter how crummy I thought things went, like it had to have been easy compared to some of the stuff that she went through. So once she read the book and liked it, I didn't care anymore how anyone else received it. And I didn't realize that was the thing I needed. It just, it took a lot of weight off of my concern about how the book would be received. So those are my only real two concerns. After that, you take the book for what it is. There's no use in me trying to my art style sort of tries to handhold you through the story anyway. So for me to try to do that any further after I've drawn it feels redundant. So yeah, hopefully does that answer your question? Cool.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Yeah. How about you?
I want people to I want other comics writers or aspiring artists to see that you can write comics that isn't strictly memoir, and for people to feel like there are many different ways to express emotionally what had happened, even when you're not ready to completely expose yourself, and people who are close to you, to the public, to judge. I think that was maybe one of my big concerns about selling it as memoir, is that I don't want people to think that this is all that transpired between me and my mother, or between me and my friends. There were relationships that went through the duration of the book. I guess I am really not ready to be in the place where there are people who are recognizable from something I publish. I think that is something I want to find out more as a writer going forward, because I was not ready to put any friends in there without making them a proxy. Anyone I've been in a relationship with, my parents' faces. There are just things that I still think are very private and personal to me, and then that seems kind of contrary to publishing a very personal book. So I am glad that I went ahead and did it anyway without compromising a lot of what I was not ready to share. So I hope people take away the messages that I want to put out, which is when there are things that are very traumatizing that happens, especially if you're younger in your journey, that you feel very just shocked and lost and don't know what to do. There are a lot of different ways to process them and to visually imagine what these places could be. And some of them can be your standing in an airport and the ground falls out below you, and then you are flying through a lot of clouds and houses and trees until you land in your friend's house and they hold your hands and you dance together. Like, that is something that happens to me metaphorically, but not in real life. But I felt as if that's what has happened to me or had been happening to me for the past 4 years. Or sometimes I look up at a tree and then all the flowers on the trees are glowing, and then that somehow gives me this energy to go through with the thoughts that I have in my head. How am I going to deal with all these dual or triple identities? How am I going to become a fuller person? I think there is definitely an ideal book I have in the future about when I become that full person. And in case that doesn't happen, or in case when that happens, I'm on my dying bed, I just felt like I am sitting on a lot of comics that I need to be read first, or I need to write them first. So I do feel like I want people to take away from this is that you are reading from someone who's in a very transient state at all times, especially as an immigrant. Even my language abilities is changing year by year. And I think of this as if you are wondering about what a first generation immigrant goes through, what they would write or what I would write if I were offered to write a book. This is one of the possibilities that come out without waiting for someone else to write my story in a more traditional way. Instead of waiting for maybe one of my kids will write this. Don't have any kids right now, but like I'll be like, this is like her story, like as a more complete story. This is like what I wrote right now, or what I wrote for the past 4 years. So this is a very like transitional kind of book. That's what I want people to know.
Okay. How about you, Tyler?
Similarly to Mike, I was really worried about how my family would react to my book. Like, I felt like I was holding my breath until everyone had read it, particularly my mom's mom and my dad, who's like, he's nervous about being portrayed the wrong way. And the whole thing is like such a messy, like uncomfortable topic. Like, no one looks their best when they're like miserable. I also had a whole long thing with my therapist about if my mom would be upset that I was making the book. And like, as I say in the book, I'm not 100% sold on like heaven or an afterlife or whatever. Like, I don't really know, but my mom was a super private person. Like, there were a lot of things about her life that I didn't know. And the thought that I'm like displaying this really vulnerable side of her to just like tons and tons of strangers was a lot to deal with. So that's something I still sometimes struggle with. But in terms of like the actual audience of the book, I think the I don't know who said this quote, but I heard before, like, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And I think that's what I wanted for my book, like for other people who lost parents or loved ones, for them to read it and feel like someone gets it and they're not alone. And like, but then for the people who haven't lost a loved one or who know people who have lost loved ones, for them to kind of see like a behind the scenes kind of view of death. Because I think a lot of death in other media, it'll be like someone's in the hospital and then it just cuts to the funeral or something, or they get diagnosed and it cuts to their deathbed, or there are all these like cuts where like the real messy, like real stuff is. And that's the stuff that I wanted to show people, because I think like putting words and pictures to it makes it a little less scary, or at least less mysterious. Yeah.
Yeah, I notice a sort of a through line in all of your work about, and you've all just spoken about this, Mike, in terms of not wanting to portray a hero or a villain, and you worried about sharing too much of your mother's life, knowing that she was a private person, and Yao, you know, worrying about how you portray your friends and your family, and to, you know, wanting people to know that there isn't just one side. I find that fascinating, and I think it's difficult to navigate that, and I really applaud all of you for doing that difficult work.
Thank you.
So here, we don't have too much time left. Do you guys have any upcoming projects you want to talk about yet? We know that Yao's got a memoir she's working on. How about you, Tyler?
I have a picture book coming out next summer. It's been like my quarantine project, and it's called Bodies Are Coins for, I think we're saying like ages 3 to 5. So it's for like little bitty kids. And it's sort of like, the pictures are like a less intense version of Where's Waldo. Like, it's not itty bitty stuff, but it's like lots of things happening with lots of different bodies. And my goal with it is for these little kids who haven't gotten to an age where they have any kind of like judgment about their body or about other people's bodies to look at the book and be like, wow, all these kinds of bodies are cool. Kind of how like there's so many different kinds of dogs. Like, dogs look so different from each other, but it's not like one of them is better than the other. They're just all great.
That's true. That's true.
Really
all dogs are good.
All dogs are
yeah, all dogs are great.
good. Yeah.
All cats too, but cats don't look as different from each other. Yeah.
They can sometimes.
That's true.
Yeah.
And then I'm about to start working on another graphic memoir about mental health, like any day now. So that I'm like gearing myself up to go back down into the trenches.
Poor kid.
Good luck. How about you, Mike? Do you have anything coming up you're excited about?
Let me see. I have lots more work coming from Marvel. I am doing a short run on Daredevil, and spoiler warning, he's gonna beat people up. Surprise, surprise.
Violence in a superhero comic?
I know, it's crazy. Kung fu and stuff. I didn't see it coming. But it's fun, and I am reluctant to admit it, but I have plotted out the next book with happiness. I think Tyler just mentioned how you weren't sure. You talked to a therapist about how you sort of handle the feelings around uh, how your mother might have received the book. And I had the same issues, only I'm not bright enough to go to a therapist, so I ended up adding a chapter where we meet again, and she lets me know how she felt about the book, but she doesn't actually speak in the chapter. And this was, we added these chapters. The last 3 chapters were not from the original book. The original book is about 10 years old. The last 3 chapters are new, and they came about through my editor at Boom, Sierra, who's very, very smart, and I need smart people around me. And she's like, Mike, stop being dumb. You need more material to sort of bridge the last 10 years. And it made me realize that there's probably a lot of material that, maybe material is the wrong word, but a lot of things that I didn't address well. And some storytelling tools that I didn't use in the original book. So I'm going to do a follow-up that does a couple things differently. One is going to focus mostly on how important art was for me growing up, sort of the only lifeline I felt like I had. And I'm going to slow the time frame down, so it's going to be all over the course of one night, sort of an American Graffiti, but with Puerto Rican kids acting stupid in the middle of the night. So I'm hoping to, that's plotted out. I'm hoping to start that in the next, I don't know, few months. And lots more stuff from Marvel. I'm still in contract.
Great. So, that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, you said you're starting work on an actual memoir as well. Are you excited for anything else, or is that kind of just going to dominate your time going forward?
Yeah, so I do plan for it to dominate my time, and I made a lot of time for working on this book, because this time I do want to, I guess, really push myself to write from my experience when I was first coming to America. There were just a lot of stories I had wanted to tell for a long time, and every few years I will see it in a completely different perspective. So now it's been almost 14 years since I first came here, so I do feel like this is one version that I am comfortable working on, but a lot of that involves going back and looking at just like old journals and old photos, and possibly I really want to get permission from a lot of people to start working on it. But then at the same time, I feel like that is my own story. So like there's not much I can do if someone says no, they don't want to be in it. So this is something that is very realistic that I want to do, and it just takes so much mental energy. I felt like every photo I have to look at, I have to rest for like a day or something, or just like thumbnailing the initial pages. I would just do like once a week, I would thumbnail a lot of pages, but then like I just can't even think about it for the rest of the week. It's something that I want to do to become a better writer, just to be more comfortable with having to deal with all that material, because I do want to put out some of these personal narratives, but it is definitely just very very hard. It's very nice to finally be doing this, so that's gonna take all of my time.
All right. Well, yeah, good luck to all 3 of you. I'm very excited. Like I said, I really enjoyed all of your books, and I'd love to see what's coming next from each of you. I'm getting the 5-minute warning here, so let's go ahead and mention everybody's books once again. We've got Everything is Beautiful and I'm Not Afraid by Yao Xiao. We've got Dancing at the Pity Party by Tyler Feder. And we've got Happiness Comes After by Mike Hawthorne. Great books, all 3. I hope everybody enjoyed watching this panel. Thank you all for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great.
Yeah, it's very refreshing to be able to talk about these sort of personal things and and not worry about weighing everybody else down because we all just kind of get it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So once again, thank you all for joining me. I hope everybody enjoyed putting the eye in graphic is our official
That's
title.
it.
Yeah, have a great time.